Well, you should see our president, or our executive director of the Rice County Historical Society, Susan Garwood, is with us today. We're going to talk about a special event coming up this weekend at the Historical Society. I don't want to get the word out about, so that's why we asked her to come in studio today on our AM Minnesota show. Tomorrow we'll be heading up to the Mariucci Arena, the University of Minnesota campus. That's where Goodhue plays Sacred Heart out of Grand Forks, East Grand Forks. And we'll be having that game for you. Of course, Sacred Heart, as the name would suggest, is a Catholic school up in East Grand Forks. And they have one loss on the season. They're only lost to a North Dakota team. They haven't lost to a Minnesota team. Goodhue hopes to change that tomorrow. We'll get underway about 10:45 at 11 o'clock tip-off. Of course, Goodhue is not only the #1 rated team in the state in girls basketball in Class A, they are also the #1 seeded team in the tournament. So the big old target is on the back of Goodhue. What do you think of that, Susan?
That's pretty exciting.
I think it's pretty exciting too, and we're looking forward to it. And you're pretty excited about this event coming up on Saturday.
We sure are, very much so.
So tell us about it.
So this is our kickoff event celebrating the Rice County Historical Society's 90th anniversary. And so the event is kind of three things that are happening over at the Village Theater here in town. It's this Saturday, March 19th, starting at 3 o'clock. And we're starting off with silent movies from Rice County's past. You know, what do you do at a movie theater? The movies today, you go and you sit and you wait for the previews and then you see the movie. At another time period, they used to have these newsreels and that sort of thing before the movie. So we're sort of following along that line, and we're starting with home movies from Rice County. The majority of them actually are from Faribault. In fact, they are ones that were filmed by a Fleckenstein family member. So lots of things of workers working at the brewery, some family members celebrating birthdays or having dinner, some at the old golf course when it was by the, I think it was actually by the, maybe by the old high school,
Yep,
I think?
Well, actually, the current high school, I think, sits where the golf course was.
Right, yep. And the airport when it was over by Divine Mercy, and even some, I guess it was called Jalopy and Thrill Ride Day in 1937 at the Rice County Grandstand. It was pretty amazing. At any rate, what's really great is that there are home movies of all of this. And so we'll get to actually see some of that as a part of this event. And then we'll move into showing the movie The Quiet Man. Great flick, fabulous flick. Especially, it's great with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. It's one of John Ford's quintessential movies. And what better movie to see just 2 days after St. Patty's Day?
Yeah, I remember that movie. I remember it very well.
Yeah, it's a great one set in Ireland, and it was 1952, and beautiful color, and I've got a little synopsis about it that it's a love story between John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, with a whole bunch of familial ties. Is an American boxer who finds his way back to where he was born in Ireland, and he crosses path with Maureen O'Hara, of course, who is, well, I don't want to give too much of it away because it's a really great story, but
it's a good love story.
It is really good. It's really good.
It's pretty cool. And she just recently passed.
She did. So, and we're just testing the movie, and again, Blu-ray on the big screen. It's absolutely stunning.
Oh, cool. Blu-ray on the big screen. Sounds awesome. That's at the Village Theater this Saturday.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Is there an admission?
There is. $5 if you're a member of the Historical Society, $7 if you're not. And the concession stand will be open, and also afterwards, anybody who's there who would like to can take a behind-the-scenes tour of the theater. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't start out as the theater. And there are some signs of its previous ownership.
Okay, we'll get, that was a nice teaser from Susan. We will get more information.
You know, we try and celebrate different pieces of Rice County's history, and we realized we'd not done when celebrating the moving image, the whole movies that have been taken by people, and just the whole experience of going to theater. I know that movies certainly are still prevalent today, but these old movies, and with the newsreels before then in the big theater, that there's just something about that experience that we're excited to be able to experience ourselves today.
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have the outdoor theater anymore.
That was
part
fun.
of our history too, you know.
It sure was. It sure was. That the drive-in. There are a couple of drive-in theaters still around, as I understand. Do I recall? Is there one up in Elko? Is there a new one?
Might be. I don't
up
know.
near the Elko.
I just know there used to be one here.
Absolutely. Just on the north side of town, on Highway 3 now.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of it. Looks like it would have been a great place. Nice. You can, as you drive by, you can imagine where the theater was and where the cars would have parked and so on.
Yeah, it was quite a part of I know my history. I don't know. Did you go to the?
Not too many drive-ins, but I can remember them when I was young. I'm the youngest of three, and I can remember Mom, Dad, and the three of us piling into a car to go see a drive-in movie.
Yeah, I lived right across the street from a drive-in growing up, and I used to run across the street and sneak into a movie.
You could do that at a drive-in, couldn't you? It was really easy.
There were woods right next door, so I'd go into the woods, and I'd come out the woods on the other side of where they had to pay.
Now, how did you hear it? Because part of the whole
That
drive-in...
was true confessions there, wasn't it?
It sure was. Well, now, how did you hear it? Because, of course, an old drive-in theater, you'd drive in and then you'd take the speaker and hang it on your window or some... Could you hear the movie well enough by not having a car?
I didn't really care about the movie, to be honest. I didn't sneak in to see the movie.
Oh, well, there you go.
You know, I'd get some concessions or something. I
Sure.
was just a kid then.
Well, and maybe the cartoons were fun to see with or without the sound.
But it was a good time, good part of the history. Just as all a history is, as I noted on our post promoting today's show, Susan, I don't know why, but I've always been interested in history. Even when I was a kid, I was interested.
Well, you know, one of the things, those of us that like the story of people, like to talk to people and like to hear what happened to them and know a little bit about them, that's what history is about. It's just that we're learning about stories from the past. And so I think history is really interesting, actually.
I know. I always used to tell my dad that I wished I would have been in the Wild West days.
Oh.
And of course he'd tell me, no, you don't, because they didn't have indoor plumbing. And then I'd say, well, I wouldn't know the difference, right?
Well, that's true. That's very true. You're right. Going from today backwards would be a challenge. I think that the indoor plumbing would be a challenge, but I think more so would be no electricity, no running water inside the house, no telephones, no radio, all those kinds of things would be tougher. I was actually talking with a colleague at the Minnesota Historical Society not too long ago, and she had just seen the movie The Revenant, and we were talking about wonder what the smell was like, because we don't think a lot about all those other kinds of experiences from the past, the sounds, the sights, the smells. The sights are easier because you can capture that by camera, but you know, what was it like to not be around modern amenities and all that kind of thing for an extended period of time. So
yeah. Well, like I say, if you didn't know they existed, you probably wouldn't miss them.
I think you're right.
But, like you said, you step back in a time machine, you hope you'd be able to come back.
Well, and you know, people have asked me what time period would I like to go back to, and in truth, I don't feel a real compulsion to go back to any particular place. I'd like to go forward. I'd like to see what our future brings. But you're right, is that I wonder today or in the future what they will have that we don't know to miss right now.
It's interesting that you mentioned electricity, because when my dad turned 80, we had a big birthday bash for him, and I remember I asked him, what was the greatest invention in his lifetime? And he said electricity.
I would bet, just when you think about the whole daylight savings time that we've just gone through was all about trying to save daylight at a time when daylight was your only source of light other than candlelight. At a time that really helped maximize the day and your natural light source. Because I just think about everything that we do in the winter that happens after dusk. Now it's not, the sun sets at 4:30. We're still up till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. That's only possible because of electricity.
Yep. I thought he'd say, automobile.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even take into consideration that he was born in 1916, that, electricity, they didn't have, he had an outhouse for many years.
Did he grow up on a farm?
He grew up in North Minneapolis.
Oh, wow.
But
okay.
Back when he grew up in North Minneapolis, he said virtually everybody in the neighborhood had chickens or a cow or
Sure.
their source of milk,
Absolutely. Yep. That was the case here in town as well. You think about the white picket fence as a decorative thing. You want that dream that many had of having a house with a white picket fence. Well, the white picket fence was about the shape, but everybody had a fence. That was to keep in your chickens and your cows and your horses.
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day.
So, again, this movie is on Saturday at the Village Theater. I don't suppose you want to give us a teaser on...
Well, first of all, it's at 3 o'clock. The Village Theater, of course, is an active theater. They show movies Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And those are nighttime movies, so that's one of the reasons that we are doing this at 3 o'clock. And the doors will open about 2:15, so anybody who wants to come early can do that. About so some of the silent movies, I think I talked a little bit about. I have to say the jalopy races are my favorite part, going around the racetrack and seeing the grandstand. But for the movie, The Quiet Man.
So is this during the fair, or was it a separate event?
It looked like it was a separate event.
Okay.
Based on the images that we've seen of it and so on. As for the movie itself, John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara were iconic figures at that time. Maureen had been, she was born in Ireland, and so again, the movie taking place in Ireland just 2 days after St. Patty's Day seemed to make a lot of sense there. 1952, Maureen would have been just 30 years old, or 32 years old, excuse me, but had been in a lot of movies already by that point in time. John Wayne had certainly been in plenty of westerns already, so to have him in this, really it's a romance, but a piece set in Ireland and so on, was interesting. Perhaps a bit out of his natural or his previously known element, but it's beautifully done. And it was filmed in Ireland, and it's a great movie. There are some, there's not a single swear word, although I've actually looked into this one. There's not a single swear word in the whole movie, although there was an almost swear word that he didn't say. There's a healthy amount of drinking, although also a healthy amount of...
This is Ireland, for gosh sakes.
This is Ireland, absolutely. And there's a healthy amount of statements that perhaps you shouldn't be spending all the time in the pub, kind of thing. There is a lot of respect, I think, for everyone, and yet really it's just wonderful. The courting, the ways that the old courting ways, and
there's humor in it.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Lots of humor. Lots
of humor. The pictures are awesome, as you said. It's filmed in Ireland, and the pictures are just phenomenal.
They really are. They really are, and it's not just John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara's iconic film. Of course, it is John Ford's considered one of his best movies that he's ever made. It was just a little bit from the Internet Movie Database and from Wikipedia about The Quiet Man. It was based on a 1933 Saturday Evening Post short story of the same name, so that's kind of neat.
another part of Americana, the Saturday Evening Post.
Absolutely, absolutely. And really, again, it's known for its lush photography of the Irish countryside. Long cinematic, semi-comic fist fight. There's a fist fight that goes from one part of town to another that is just very funny and really well done. So great flick. I'm not doing a good job of selling it as fabulous as it is. It's one of my favorites. As I mentioned, the home movies that were shot here from Rice County, and then the movie itself. But then afterwards, folks can take a walking tour of a self-guided walking tour. We'll have some volunteers around the building itself. It's very interesting. It of course was first built as an armory, and then it spent a bit of time as an undertaker funeral home, and then was converted into a theater in the 1940s. And to do that, they lowered the floor. And we'll actually have underneath, you can actually see, this used to be a flat floor that's now been significantly angled to give you that stadium feeling. This was done again in the 40s roughly. And you can actually go underneath the floor and see how they made the modifications to that. It's pretty amazing.
So when was it built?
The building itself was built at the end of the 1900s, or end of the 1800s, excuse me, and was converted, like I said, was first as the armory, and then was converted to the undertakers and so on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just the life of a building, its history is amazing too.
Exactly.
I get comments all the time from listeners. Of course, I moved here in 1987, which is relatively, when you talk about history, it's relatively new, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of people tell me about old stores that used to be downtown. It's really fun to hear about that. They share their memories with me about what the town was like when they grew up in Faribault.
Well, and that's the best part actually about the Saturday tours. The owner, Steve McDonough, is going to be on hand and can talk a little bit. He has done the deep digging into the history of the building. That's one of the things that at the Historical Society, we don't claim to know everything. Our job isn't actually to know all of the details, but rather to help direct people to where they can find them.
So you'd like to have some of these people share these stories with you too?
Oh, we would love that.
About growing up in Faribault and what used to be downtown in certain buildings.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is that's really helpful. And we have research files, and anybody can share a story, and then we can add that story to that building's file, and that we are slowly accumulating, and that way people in the future will be able to look back and know that story as well. So yes, please, any story and any place here in Faribault or in Rice County, of course, we're the Rice County Historical Society, so growing up on a farm or something that you did on one of the rivers in the county, or the lakes or what have you, that would be great. We'd love to hear those stories.
Yeah, we've seen pictures of the big slide they used to have out
at Roberts Lake, right? That was a slide, by the way, made by the Sellner Manufacturing. That was actually made about 5 years before they invented the tilt-a-whirl.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
It looked like a lot of fun.
Oh, it did. That's this water slide that must have been at least a story.
Oh, it was massive.
2 stories high, and you'd take this slide. It looked actually like a toboggan. Reminds me of a toboggan. And you would carry that all the way up, and you'd sit and like the giant slide at the state fair, you'd go down this thing, only you would land in the water and slide out so it was very popular at the local beaches, and not just here in the state or in Rice County, but all over the state, and actually all over the Midwest.
So they had slides like this everywhere?
They did.
Didn't have anything like that where I grew up.
Me either.
But then this is long before my time, I think, too, when I was a kid.
Right, this would have been in the early 1920s.
A whole different time.
It was. At a time when I think with computers, I remember when the computer was first being introduced as something that could be in everybody's home, and that personal computer, and in your office. I remember, and I was young. I would have been in elementary, junior high time period, and I remember them saying, this is going to be such a time saver. We're going to have to think about all the things that the new leisure activities that we do, and instead all it's done is made us expect things faster and to do more. I think it's in fact taken away some of the pleasures of relaxing at the beach, going on a water slide.
Yeah, unfortunately your work can be with you everywhere now.
Literally. Yep, everywhere.
We need to unplug once in a while.
I think it's a really good idea. It's tough to do though, because
cell phones, that smartphones, and everything that iPad that's sitting in front of you has.
Absolutely. Yep. It enables me to go online to do research, to answer questions immediately, rather than going to the library and pulling out the card catalog and looking through the resources there. They've been transferred to the internet. And don't get me wrong, I love the internet, Dolby database, and other kinds of resources that we can tap into, because we're able to answer more questions more quickly, and that's really great. Yep. But you're right, it's good to unplug and perhaps step back into time in a way.
Susan Garwood is the Executive Director of the Rice County Historical Society, and again, this fundraiser is this Saturday at about 3 in the afternoon.
Correct.
That's when you're starting the show.
That's when the show starts, right. So we're encouraging people, just like you would with going to a movie, to arrive a little early. The doors will open about.
Let real butter on the popcorn.
Steve is the one who, so the concession stand that's there is a part of the Village Theater's normal concession stand, and Steve is the one who does that. I'm quite certain it's fabulous. This is a cash or check only event, just so folks know.
That's $5.
Exactly. And popcorn is really reasonable. Soda, candy.
I don't even remember paying $5 for a movie.
I know. Way back then, we have looked into it when we as the Historical Society, of course, started in 1926, and way back when, movies would have been about a dime. My dad used to tell stories that he'd get his dime. Actually, it was a quarter, because then he could get popcorn and a drink and go to the movie.
For a quarter.
Right, exactly. And the dime got you in all day. So you would go whenever you wanted to go, and you might hit the middle of a movie, but you'd just stay in the theater, and they'd play newsreels in between, and then the next movie the same movie would restart, and so you'd stick around until the movie changed, or the point that you arrived. So you'd see the end and then the beginning.
So instead of the newsreels, you're doing the faribault home movies.
Correct.
That replaces what would have been the newsreels.
Right, absolutely. But we're doing it somewhat in the style of newsreels, where there's a voiceover telling us a little bit about what we're seeing. Because of course the movies would have been silent from the 1930s era. And what's neat about these movies is, of course, that they're from the 1930 movies. That's amazing. But I wonder how many people have their own home movies that grandparents or parents or even themselves have taken. I think about all the selfies and things that I see on the internet. I hope people are taking good care of those for themselves and for their own family history, because preserving the moving image is such a neat thing to look back on over time.
Yeah. Well, I know our family never took any home movies. There's all still pictures in my family.
In my immediate family, that's true as well. My grandpa, though, did, and so it was really neat to be able to uncover some home movies of my mom in the 1940s era.
So this is something to think about, folks. If you're thinking about what you're going to do with your things when you pass, let's say you don't have children, maybe the Historical Society would be a good spot for those to share with future generations.
Absolutely. And movies, the digital version is great because we can see it today, but those old movies, they're incredibly stable. They can become a little brittle, but the image on the film itself is solid as a rock, and well worth the time to look at, preserve, and You're absolutely right. If you're not sure where to put it, give us a call at the Historical Society, and we're happy to talk with you about it.
Yeah, it's something to think about, and just contact you, or?
Absolutely. You can give us a call at the Historical Society. Our number is 507-332-2121. We're there Monday through Friday from 9 to 4, although honestly we're there a whole lot later than that. But.
Sure. Now, I have been dabbling a bit in my family history. Of course, my family did not come from here, but you have a lot of, I've been told, great resources for folks that are looking into their family history. Now, you just mentioned the Dalton database.
Absolutely, and there are other
Dalby database.
Right, and there are other sources. So the Dalby database, what's neat about that is that those are Rice County, Steele County, very regional resources.
Right.
Although honestly, they do have some resources from the whole state of Minnesota. But a part of our job is also to know other sites and other sources that are good to look into. How do you find the 1856, 58, 1860, 1865 censuses? And you can find those online.
Yeah, well, with the demise eventually of physical newspapers,
right,
it's all going to be online, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hate to think about it as being a demise. There are some of us that still like the paper. Again, I have plenty of my own technology around, but I still like paper. The newspaper is it's best in the print version, in my opinion.
Yeah, well.
But I understand what you're saying. Preserving all versions are important.
It's probably going to happen.
I know.
Probably sooner rather than later. Sorry about that, Susan.
That's all right.
As a tear rolls down her cheek. No, I'm just kidding. Susan Garwood is the executive director of the Rice County Historical Society. Again, you can see that movie at 3 o'clock, The Quiet Man. Awesome movie. And then the home movies from the 1935 to 38 time frame here
Correct.
in the faribault
Correct.
will be shown before that.
Right. So, and actually the home movies are going to start at 3, and then The Quiet Man will start after that. So
okay.
If you are seated and the show will start at 3 o'clock.
Sounds awesome. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate
My
it,
pleasure.
Susan.
Thanks for letting me.
And that's coming up this Saturday. Get on over there, folks. You're in tune to KDHLAM.